Hello and welcome to Elemental Yarn. My name is Gavin and welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you everyone for checking it out. I'm glad you liked the last video and I'm hoping I can maintain your interest with these future ones. So really quickly, let's get into today's topic. Today I'm going to talk about what the players and their characters actually do in this dang game, in the game Tides of Ambition. Yes, this is the second of the development journal series for my RPG project Tides of Ambition. So the topic of this video is going to be, what does a campaign look like? What does an adventure look like? What actually happens over the course of game sessions? But first I want to talk about the design goals of the game itself as well as the rulebook. So basically, I want this singular rulebook, the core rulebook for Tides of Ambition, to contain everything you need to play. So that's going to be game master information, player information, faction and campaign information, NPC stat blocks, everything you need right in one book. And there could be supplement books later on for specific settings or adventures and stuff like that. But this is the core rulebook. And that includes some sample campaigns to get you started. If you haven't seen Matt Colville's most recent video about D&D 5e, I'd recommend it. It's a pretty good watch. And one of the things he talks about is that 5e doesn't really have a defined playstyle. It's kind of trying to appeal to a wide variety of gamers, and as a result, what it's actually about is kind of muddy. Because it's got some dungeon crawling routes, but also people use it to do cooking games. So it's just kind of all over the place, and it's really trying to be the everything game. And I would like to add to that, that can actually cause some disparity in player expectations, which can result in some issues during game time. So for example, player A likes D&D because they like the dungeon crawling experience of resource management and putting the ball bearing on the floor to see if there's an incline and all that kind of OSR type stuff. Player B watches Critical Role and really likes the development of characters and their relationships and things like that, while player C really likes to optimize their character to be the most powerful they can possibly be. They play the wizard and they want to fill their spellbook with all the spells in the lands. They're very achievement oriented. They want to level up, they want the gold, they want to achieve as much as they can. And none of those playstyles are wrong, but you can see why the dungeon master might have a hard time reconciling all these in the same game, even if they have a really good session 0. So one of the things I really want to emphasize for my game is demonstrating what playstyles are allowed and encouraged and facilitated. So I could do that by explaining it on one of the pages of the rulebook, saying, oh, well, this is what is protected by the game, basically. This is what we facilitate you to do. Or I could provide actual concrete examples so that people not only have an example of what the game could look like, but also have a jumping off point to start playing themselves. And the way I do that is what I'm calling either campaign starters or campaign schemes. I'm not really sure yet, but the idea is this is basically one giant prompt. Right now I'm thinking it'll span about 4 pages, and this includes everything you need to get started playing. This includes information for the players to make their characters and to design their faction, and it gives the GM some tools to be able to facilitate an ongoing story. So let me show you what I mean. Let me show you one of the campaign starters I've been working on, as an example. Now, keep in mind, this is not going to be a full-fledged module or adventure. This is basically just a collection of story hooks and prompts, and with some GM tools to get things going. Okay, so the name of this campaign starter is The Sins of House Resolute. Let me read you the little pitch here. The Harrows region is dominated by an iron-fisted noble family known as House Resolute, who will bleed their people to death if they are not overthrown before the winter solstice. So that's kind of our log line, it's our pitch, it's our storyline. It's kind of like the elevator pitch for what this campaign is about. So important to note, these campaign starters will be listed in the first chapter of the core rulebook. These are meant to be viewed by both the players and the game masters. There's nothing in here that's going to spoil the overall story, but that's still useful for game masters. So when a group of players get together and want to play a game, they can flip through a number of these campaign starters. I want to include at least 5 of these, I think, would be good to get started. But they'd be able to flip through these and figure out which one appeals to them over the others. It's kind of like you're going to see a movie, and you look at the movie posters on the wall to figure out what you're going to watch that day. Well, these are the movie posters. These don't tell you what's going to happen, but they do tell you what you can expect in each of these campaigns. So either the game master could collect some of these and say, hey, look, I can run this one or this one or this one, or the players can make suggestions, or you can make your own. And I'll include guidelines in the rulebook for how to make your own campaign starter. Really, the players and the GM should work together to figure out what the story is going to be, and this all happens in session 0. And I actually do want to have a good procedure of things, like an agenda of things to go over in session 0 to make sure everyone's on the same page. But assuming everyone's on the same page and wants to run the Sins of House Resolute, they'd be able to use these couple of pages as kind of their guiding light. So let's see what else is contained within this campaign starter. So we've got the title, and I want the titles to really come across as like cool movie titles or book titles. We've got that log line that gives you kind of a bird's eye view of what it's really about. We've got a more involved summary of what you can expect in this campaign, and then there's an overview, and it tells you, this is important, it gives you a how to win section. Really at the core of a campaign in Tides of Ambition is the concept of your objective, your overall arc. This is something that's going to unite all the player characters into one common goal, and it can be a lot of different things. For this one, their common objectives is they need to prevent some unspecified or as yet unknown doom from plunging the Harrows into darkness, and House Resolute has something to do with it. So it's interesting because you don't really think of, oh, how do you win? You know, oh, you're playing D&D, are you winning? And that seems like a silly question. But I really like the idea of everyone having something in common from the beginning. So you win the game when you save the Harrows from this impending doom that's set to occur on the winter solstice. So it's got kind of a ticking time bomb where you got to fix it before a certain point. I've also got a list of obstacles here, things like dangerous secrets. The whole matter of the Harrows and its leadership is embroiled in a massive conspiracy with multiple layers. People vanish mysteriously, often before they have a chance to divulge helpful information. Another one is the retching. Due to poor sanitation, mass poverty, and a lack of medical resources, a virulent plague is sweeping through the Harrows. Sick houses become morgues, which then become pyres, as the guards set them aflame for public safety. So these are obstacles and threats that the player characters may encounter along their adventure to try and save the Harrows. These are things in their way that the GM can use to throw a wrench into their plans or to introduce new complications. But there's also a list of assets here, things like civic unrest. Although many heroines live in fear of their oppressors and distrust even close friends, there is a widespread undercurrent of anger in their hearts. If it can be kindled, then they may be incited to rebel. Or another one is ancient artifacts. The Harrows was once part of an ancient empire. Crumbling ruins can be found in remote areas such as the Tashwood and the Teeth of Targus. Valuable or powerful items might still be found within these sites. So these are things the players can look for when they need a leg up in the world. When everything seems against them, there are tools they can try and find and gather to help them in their struggle. And these are also things that the GM can offer to the players when they are in need of a helping hand. Then there's the Remnant of Vyre. This is the primary faction that's going to be associated with this campaign. The players can choose to play as the Remnant of Vyre, or they can be any faction they want. As the last remaining members and loyalists of the now defunct House Vyre, who once ruled this land, you must rise up and reclaim your rightful rule. So the players can choose to be the Remnant of Vyre as their chosen faction for this campaign, or they can go with something else. There's other suggestions in here. If the players don't choose to play as the Remnant of Vyre, then the Remnant might be allies later on during the adventure. Other options are the players could be an honorable band of thieves local to the Harrows who chafe under the yoke of House Resolute, or they might be a zealous cult hell-bent on summoning their great savior from beyond the veil of reality. Alternatively, the players could simply be heroes of circumstance. This is for the people who really do enjoy the D&D style of things, where you're just adventurers, right? You're not necessarily tied to any particular cause. You just want to wander around and find adventure and seek riches or fame or glory, or just to do the right thing. One thing I'd like to note is that Chapter 2 of the rulebook is called Faction, and Faction will have the Remnant of Vyre with a full faction profile and its own unique stats and important NPCs to the faction. All the information about that faction will be located in its own thing. So the idea is you can kind of mix and match. So this one, the recommended faction is Remnant of Vyre, but you could instead be one of the other factions listed there. Or you could play as the Remnant of Vyre, but not do this campaign at all. You could do a different campaign. So there's kind of like natural pairings, but you don't have to follow that. You can kind of mix and match and do whatever you want. Or you can custom make your own campaign, or custom make your own faction, or both. Okay, then we've got a section on House Resolute, where it introduces some of the main characters, some of the primary NPCs of House Resolute. We've got Duchess Helva, Lord Gabriel, Lady Pephalis, Lord Strythe, and Lord Nothing. And then there's a section on the Harrows themselves, on the region. I also have a map, which I realized I probably should have made portrait instead of landscape. One thing I really want to have for each of these campaign starters is a map of a region that you can use either for this campaign or for any other purpose. If an adventure would take you from this land to somewhere else, I want to make sure I've got a couple of maps peppered throughout for specific regions. There'll also be a big world map showing the borders between nations and continents and everything, so that you have something concrete you can look at to say, oh, well, there's a village here, and there's a river here, and there's a mountain here. But this is the region map of the Harrows, as currently constituted. And not everything on the map is labeled. I want to have some things remain unlabeled for the GM to fill in however they want. The major locations are labeled, so the capital city, 2 of the other major cities, the forest, the mountains, the ocean, things like that. Each one of those is labeled so that you have something, but I also don't want to fill in all the blanks. I want to make sure the GM has some power to say, oh, there's a town up here. I can, name it whatever I want and decide what that town is like on my own. So in each of these region descriptions, I really want to add some information to evoke some emotions and some idea of the flavor of the place. So for example, in the Teeth of Targus, it says, the Teeth of Targus are twin mountain ranges found to the north of Harrowdown. The ground is rocky and unsuitable for agriculture, but the ruins of some ancient civilization can be found between them. Or the city of Harrowdown, I've got several sections here. So for example, the Streets District is the most populous part of town, and is currently under quarantine due to the retching. Food is scarce and anarchy reigns. A beggar named Hurley knows every nook and cranny of the district, as well as a secret route in and out. He doesn't share this information lightly, however. I try to include an NPC in most of these regions to give at least one prompt for the GM to use to create a character there. A lot of this is really built around providing prompts to the GM to kind of fuel ongoing story. And then finally, we've got a section for Game Master Guidelines. Again, there's no real spoilers in here. Mostly what this section does is it gives some advice to the GM, letting the GM know what's most important to this campaign, what's most important for the players to know, what's most important for you to know and figure out. And then also I've got just a list of ideation questions. And these are questions the GM can use when they find themselves running into a wall, or they need a prompt, or they need something to keep the story moving. They can take one of these questions and answer it for themselves, and then maybe sprinkle a few clues for the players to find to pursue that question. So for example, one of the questions is, what lies in the crypts beneath Harrowdown? Do any of the Almistras, the major nobility, do any of the Almistras have secrets they can be blackmailed for? What are these secrets? Are any of the PC's allies secretly working for House Resolute? Can they be swayed to the other side? So again, none of these are spoilers. These are just questions that the GM can use to add to the story as they go. So notice this campaign starter doesn't have a specific sequence of events. It doesn't include a beginning, middle, and end. It's really just the beginning. It's not even the beginning. It's just the circumstances that exist before the beginning of the campaign. This is just a set of prompts and story hooks to get things going. So why did I do it this way? Like I said, I really want to make sure there's tools in here that the players and the GM can use to get started and get playing, and then maybe figure it out as they go. Now, this is the kind of module that would appeal to me as a game master. I tend not to go for the pre-made adventures and modules that much. I know a lot of people love them, and I don't begrudge that at all. I think that's a very valid way to GM, but for me, it's a lot less work, actually, and I feel a lot more empowered when I just have a given set of circumstances, and then I just kind of figure it out from there. That's my playstyle. I don't like to have everything spelled out for me. I don't want to have to read a 300-page book of NPCs and maps and descriptions and everything. I'd rather just have something like this, where I have a map, I have some important details, some NPCs, a general theme, a mood, a genre, and then just go, and then just figure it out as I go. That's my preferred playstyle. I recognize that's not everyone's playstyle, so this isn't for everyone. For this game, there's really going to be 3 tiers of pre-made adventure material. There's going to be these campaign starters, and then there's going to be just a list of storylines, a list of those little log lines, like the first line I read out loud for the beginning of The Sins of House Resolute. I'm going to have lines like those, maybe even 20 of them. Maybe I'll make a D20 table of them. So you can pick one of those just to get going, which that's very minimal. There's no maps with that at all. And then there's the campaign starters, which have the map and the NPCs and everything. And then there's a full-on adventure. So a full-on adventure book obviously is going to have to be a separate product. I can't fit an entire adventure in here, So for now, I'm just going to make a couple of these campaign starters and see if that's something people find valuable. Maybe it won't work for everyone, and that's okay. I'm going to course correct as I go. Maybe people will say like, hey, I really want to have more labels on the map, or hey, like, I need more NPCs. I need a list of names I can pull from. I really like the idea of these campaign starters where they're spoiler-free. They're the movie poster. They're the trailer for the movie. Hopefully it doesn't spoil anything for you, but it gives you an idea of what you're in for. So that way the players and the GM can work together to figure out what the campaign's going to look like. That's my idea with these. I'm hoping that it's going to be valuable not only for that, but also give enough material for the GM so they can feel confident moving forward with the story. I'm sorry, I cannot include a full 100-page adventure, beginning, middle, and end in this book. There might be room for a small sample module at the end of the book, but I don't know if I like that idea as much. I could do that. There might be room for it, but as presently constituted, this game is more geared towards multi-session campaigns, not so much for a one-shot. And I'm not confident that I could design a multi-session campaign as just a sample at the very end as an appendix for this book. So I guess I ask you, dear viewer, would you enjoy using one of these campaign starters? Do you like the idea of handing them out to your players like pamphlets and saying, hey, pick one, and then I'll run it? Or do you really need that full beginning, middle, and end adventure? Is it worth including these at all? Would you rather have a couple of these campaign starters to help flesh out the world a little bit and provide options to your players and kind of demonstrate the playstyles that are encouraged? Or would you rather have just a sample adventure at the end of the book to give you a full experience from beginning to end? And do you have any advice? Do you have any tips on how to design these campaign starters? Things that I think are missing right now from this document are things like, a coat of arms for House Resolute. I think even like a map of the city might be cool, the main city, since I think a lot of the adventure will take place there. Probably some NPC portraits and stuff like that. I'd really like to keep the campaign starter to under, 6 or 7 pages if I can. Because again, I want to fit like 5 of these in here. All right, now really quick, I wanted to go into some questions. Let's do a quick Q&A from the last video. When should the GM call for a roll? That's a great question. The GM should only call for a roll if there's dramatic potential behind it, and if they're prepared for success or a failure. If you have the most important clue to get the party going to kick off the investigation, and it's locked behind a perception check or something, don't call for a roll. If your entire adventure is hinged on them finding this clue, just give them the clue. Don't call for a roll. If you're not prepared for a failure, don't ask for it. And conversely, if you're not prepared for a success, don't call for a roll. If a player says they want to seduce the king into giving them all of his land and his crown and his throne, don't call for a roll. Because with these dice, you can always roll a success or a failure. That's kind of the whole point. So you got to be careful about when you're asking for a roll. It's important. Someone asked about class progression and classes in general. I currently have 7 classes in the works. None of these classes has a specific predetermined progression. It's all about how you want to allocate your experience. So you can custom make your class as you go to be totally unique. How does condition work? That'll be a future video, but basically your condition die is only going to fluctuate up and down pretty rarely. It's going to happen usually when you take a rest. If you're taking a rest indoors with a hot meal, it'll gravitate towards that D8, that center. If you rest in the outdoors in bad weather without eating, it might go towards D6 or even D4. Your condition can also degrade if you take a really nasty hit. You lose a lot of blood or something like that. Basically, your condition represents your character's overall well-being and health, such that it influences their ability to do things. Your condition's not going to go down just whenever you get hit by a sword. It's going to happen pretty rarely. World lore and setting overview. Again, that's a future video. I'll just say really briefly, the main world of the game is called Axios, but a major component of the game is that there are many parallel worlds, which each diverged at some point in the timeline to become its own kind of universe. And you can move between these. So for example, there's a world called Garden in which humans never evolved. And you can go there, and it's kind of like an untamed wilderness. It's got the same geography as Axios. It's got the same continents, it's got the same mountain ranges, it's got the same geographical features, but there's no civilization there. It's all just wilderness and strange, powerful beasts. Whereas another world called Rime is identical to Axios, but the last war turned out in the favor of the evil empire instead of the kingdoms. A question regarding my stroke of luck mechanic. Let's assume you're rolling 1d6 and 2d8s, and let's say the 6 and one of the 8s both roll a 6, and that would be your result die. Which die do you use? And would you get your stroke of luck if the difficulty is higher than 6? And the answer is you can choose. If you have 2 dice that are both tied for your result, you can pick which one you use. So in this case, yes, you would get your stroke of luck. You would choose the d6 die as your result die, then you'd be able to roll it again to see if you hit that. Another related question is, what if the difficulty is only 1 higher than your die size? So say you're rolling a d4 and you roll a 4, but the difficulty is 5. And the answer is yes. If the difficulty is 1 higher than your die, but you rolled the highest you possibly could, you've earned it. You get the success. You barely make it, no matter what, on your stroke of luck roll. And I don't feel too bad about giving the players the benefit of the doubt here, because I'm going to give the GM lots of tools to make sure they can mess with their day as well. Yeah, that pretty much sums up the video for today. Thanks everyone so much for watching this latest development journal update for Tides of Ambition. Let me know what you want to see next in the comments. And please give me feedback on this campaign starter. I really want to make sure that these campaign starters are a valuable tool for both GMs and players to use to come up with campaigns to keep a game going for a while. So please let me know what you think about it in the comments. And thanks everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.